Bill, let me start with you. President Trump did have a very ambitious agenda. What do you think will be the Republicans' priority when they take office in January?
Well, I don't think there's any question, but the extension of and modifications to the tax, the 2017 tax bill will be is front and center. And it's clear from what you've outlined, Bob, in terms of the trifecta, that very similar and almost a repeat of 2017 in my mind, when there was another trifecta in Trump's first term. The first thing to do was to pass a budget resolution for 2017 that had included a reconciliation instruction to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And then that did pass, and also in the House and then in the Senate, the budget resolution setting up that scenario. As we know, a reconciliation bill was produced in the House, but then particularly as it relates to repealing the Affordable Care Act. But as we all know from history, that then was brought to a close when late Senator John McCain voted against it. But that scenario, the same scenario, exists right now going into next year for the Trump administration, because do not have a budget resolution in effect for the current fiscal year that we're in, 25. And so one of the first things they'll try to do, I think, is to pass a budget resolution that will set up a reconciliation bill that would extend the tax cuts that are coming forward. I want to make one quick observation, and then I'll shut up on this, and that is Paul Ryan as Speaker in 2017 could do that in part because he had a margin of nearly 40 Republican votes. And indeed, on passing that budget resolution, I think he lost 20 votes. Steve may know better, but the bottom line was that he had the margin. As it stands today, let's be honest, we're not sure what that margin is going to be, particularly if you take a couple out that are being selected for positions, Stefanik and Waltz. You might end up with a margin of less than 2 or 3. And I guess what I want to try to say here is I think there's a different feeling about debt and deficits maybe right now than there was in 2017 because of the size of them and the direction they're going, that it may not be quite as simple as you said to pass legislation that would pass a budget resolution, let alone set a budget resolution that would have to project rather large deficits into the future.
Tom, do you think there are areas where the Democrats might try to seek consensus with the GOP, or is it going to be mostly ways to try to resist the onslaught?
Well, just to start with, I think that it was really disappointing that in the last presidential election, the topic of the deficit and debt was never uttered by either presidential candidate. And to the contrary, both Vice President Harris and President Trump proposed expensive new initiatives, although to be clear, the Harris initiatives were offset in part and cost a lot less. I mean, the Trump agenda, if he gets everything enacted that he says he wants, would add and this is with the offsets, about $7.5 trillion to the debt over the next 10 years. Not only that, but he would increase the Social Security shortfall by $2.5 trillion. He would advance the insolvency by 3 years. And so I want to be optimistic, to Bill's point, that that not all of this agenda is going to get passed. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. In addition to extending all of the 2017 cuts, he wants no tax on Social Security benefits, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and expand deportation, of course. And each of those in and of themselves is phenomenally expensive. So I think it is unlikely that he's going to get everything he wants. I think the interesting question is going to be what the Republicans do about offsets. And again, to Bill's point about concern about the deficit and debt, I think House Republicans, and I think deserve some credit that they have been very serious and focused about deficits and debt, clearly only on the spending cut side. And I'm expecting that there will be significant proposals and initiatives to cut a whole range of low-income programs, ranging from Medicaid to food stamps, TANF, and those will go to a reconciliation bill. Finally, the margin is very, very tight. Of course, it will be a lot tighter than when Paul Ryan was Speaker. The difference, though, I think, is that Donald Trump has gotten a significant endorsement by the American people. And I think there's going to be an enormous amount of pressure on House Republicans to remain unified. So I think the likelihood that House Republicans will split from their leadership as they did in 2017 are much, much smaller.